A very warm good evening, good morning, good afternoon to everyone. Welcome to this exclusive webinar where we are going to talk about resume parsing and how it is important for all of us. So, before we begin this session, let's do a little bit of housekeeping on how we are going to go about it. We'll be having this session by our exclusive director, Josh, who will be taking the entire session for all of us. And if you have any questions that you have in your head, you can write them in the text box or we will be taking them afterwards. So, Josh, all yours and take it over.
So today we're going to go in, why resume parsing is more important than ever today. And, question number one, what is resume parsing? And I don't want to get too technical on this, but at the 100,000 foot view, resume parsing is taking an unstructured document, otherwise known as a resume, and converting it into structured output that is then easily loaded into a database. In other words, when you read a resume yourself, you can, as a human, you're like, okay, there's first name, there's last name, there's address, email, phone number, here's work history, here's his job title, here's everything that he learned on that. And as a human, we're able to read between the lines. We're able to detect that inferred information. The problem with that is getting all that information into the appropriate fields in a database is difficult. Writing a computer program that knows, okay, this is a skill, this is, a job title, all of that, that's able to do that regardless of the format, the language, whatever of that resume is difficult. But that's what resume parsing does. The whole goal is to be able to take all that candidate information from the resume, break it out into the appropriate fields, load it into a database so that recruiters, talent acquisition people, etc., can then easily search, find the most relevant candidates and get them in for interviews and get them placed in jobs. This kind of leads into question number two, why resume parsing is important. Especially today, you get more applicants per job. When you had, 3 or 4 different resumes to manually look through to determine best fit for the position, much easier. But now, when you're sorting through 10, 20, 100, 500 resumes, it's impossible. The other problem with it is okay, this candidate might not be a fit for the position that you're currently working on, but they could be a fit for another position. And trying to keep all these different resumes straight, whether they're in a file or whatnot, impossible. Everybody has moved to electronic, whether it's an ATS or other, type of recruiting system. And the reason resume parsing is more important than ever is more and more companies are focusing, they don't deal in paper anymore. So what you end up having is the ability to get all of that information in a database, but more importantly, the ability to go back and search that information. Now, I know as a fact, another reason why resume parsing is important is the amount of time it takes to manually enter a candidate into an ATS or CRM. If you're manually entering all that information from the resume, what's happening is you're spending 10 to 15 minutes if you're doing a complete job and filling out all the appropriate fields. That in itself, talk about dollars spent. Let's say it takes 15 minutes to properly input a candidate into an ATS or CRM. You're making sure first name, last name, address, email, phone number is filled out, all work history, all education history. You're typing in a few skills. That way you can search them better. Well, if you're making $20 an hour and it took you 15 minutes to enter that candidate in, that's $5 spent just on data entry to get that candidate in. And nobody in their right mind wants to sit there and spend, hours and hours a day typing in candidate information. Not when it's so easy to automate. So that's reason number one why resume parsing is important. Reason number two is when it comes to the searching aspect of it. I've been in the staffing and recruiting industry for over a decade. And one of the things that I've found is, a lot of recruiters can write a Boolean search string blindfolded because it was necessary. When you were parsing a resume into a database, it was just taking the terms as they appeared on the resume and loaded those into your ATS or CRM. Let's say you were searching for an HR director. The problem with that is how many different ways can people say HR director? So you'd have to write a Boolean search string that's saying, HR director or human resource director or human resources director or director of human resources or director of HRs, et cetera, et cetera. So all the information you were searching across was non-standardized. So now you're having to come up with more and more ways to be able to search that information to get your results. Another reason why resume parsing is so important is almost every resume parser on the market has a taxonomy. Think of this taxonomy as a normalization process. Most parsers focus on, they go from a general list of skills and skill aliases to a single normalized skill. An example of this would be, as a skill, if I said MSVS 2010 and somebody else said M.S.VS, both of those would be loaded into the database with the skill of Microsoft Visual Studio. Single skill, even though they said it differently in their resumes. Same thing with job titles. That's where everybody else tends to stop. But just having that data normalized to search across is huge. Third and final question, why should you use a resume parser? First and foremost, time. Reduce the amount of time it takes to enter candidates into the database. Ensure that all their information is properly populated so that you can search them out, find them quicker, get them in for interview, get them hired to a position. So I know I kind of went over all of this, but we're just going to kind of touch base, as far as resume parsing, deep learning framework, analyze, stores, organizes, enriches through taxonomies. The enrichment part is very important because not all resume parsers do this. And that is the most important aspects to a resume tend to be the skills and such, but a resume being a document written by a human being, meant to be read by another human being, you tend to have a lot of inferred information. IT individuals understand that, hey, for my resume to be, seen, I need to make sure I have all these appropriate skill words in there. Myself, my resume tells a story. I don't really list out skills. I infer a lot of information. So if somebody reads my resume, they get it. They understand it. They realize they're talking to an experienced individual or that they're looking at an experienced individual. But if I send my resume through a parser, most parsers look at it and go, and they can't make sense out of it. So it actually, since I've been in this industry for over a decade, I actually had created 2 different resumes. I have my hand to somebody so that they can read resume, and I have my parsing resume. And there's a vast difference between them. But as technology improves, AI, machine learning, etc., the ability for parsers to pull out that inferred information from a resume to read what's between the lines is improving day after day. As I had said before, why parsers are important. Saves recruiters hours because it eliminates manual resume input. It helps to, especially in today's day and age, unbiased hiring is a big buzzword. And it's a big focus for a lot of companies. I was actually on a call earlier today with a client who wanted the ability to have a resume that had all items that could construe bias removed from it. That's something that a lot of resume parsers can do. It's something we definitely can do. I don't want this to be a sales pitch about RChilli, but just talking about it in general. Key things are not show name, not show address, email or phone number. I've had, other clients who go as far as, okay, they don't want university names showing or dates graduated. They don't want anything that could bias the recruiter in whether it's, what school they went to, was it an Ivy League university, etc. And so they're just trying to hire based on skills. So they're blanking out everything except for the skills that those candidates have. Third thing is the ability for recruiters to effectively search. It's not getting the resumes in the system is one thing, but having them there in a good searchable format really is the most important part behind it. When it comes to resume parsing, number one, not everybody speaks English. The ability to parse in any language is important. As I was saying before, configurable data fields, the ability to show or not show different aspects of the resume, depending if you're focusing on non-biased hiring. Another aspect of resume parsing, and there are several parsers doing this, is templatization of resumes. I know in working with multiple staffing and recruiting firms, they get a resume in, they look at it, they then go through and take the information on that resume, put it onto a templatized form that's branding their firm before they hand that off to a client. So recruiters will spend time doing that, but that's a simple process that's easily automated by a resume parser. The other big aspects are how easy is it to load single or multiple resumes? The whole goal behind our methodology is what can we do to make people's lives easier? Make sure they're getting all the information, make sure they're able to load all candidates into their database as quickly and easily as possible. One of the things that on the ERP side of the business, when it comes to resume parsing, is easy candidate application. I believe the latest figure is the average candidate expects to spend no more than 40 seconds applying to a job. I'm working with a number of companies who one of their main goals for 2023 is to drastically reduce their applicant drop-off rate. And the main way they're doing that is by ensuring that their application process a candidate takes less than 30 seconds to apply to a position. When it comes to the candidate experience side, I mean, think of it. Candidate experience leads to everything. I believe, 95% of candidates' first experience with a company tends to be through that company's career site. I've got a friend of mine that works at an aerospace engineer working for a large aerospace company. And one of the things that he's always said, because we talk about this just as off topic, we're sitting back on call or enjoying, drinks or whatnot, but their whole process of application, it's an hour-long process. The only thing, the reason they still get so many applicants is because of the name of the company. But what does that start making? If you're a highly technological organization and your candidates are having to manually enter in information on an application, what does that start doing about your company branding? It's one of those things that when I've been in this industry for a while, but when I see a new parser come out on the market, you have several aspects to a good resume parser. Number one is the extraction engine. We'll start with that. Making sure that it can tell, the ability between contact information, work history, education history is important. But that's only about 25% of the game. Multiple languages. Depending on what market space you're wanting to go to, your multilingual capabilities can make up another 20-25%. But the most important aspect of any resume parser, hands down, is their taxonomy. Because, as I said at the beginning of this call, nobody writes the same thing the same way in their resume. You can have multiple different ways to say the same skill or job title or university, etc. That taxonomy is truly the most powerful part of a parser because it allows for that data to be normalized. And the other thing about a taxonomy, though, is a taxonomy can go stale very, very quickly. If a company is not keeping up with their taxonomy on a regular basis, I mean, think about just over the past 5 years, how many new technologies, skills, job titles, everything that have come out. More importantly, it's not just that, but it's also, look across different industries. Project manager in the construction industry is vastly different than a project manager in the IT industry. And being able to tell the two apart is hugely important. If you're not, then all of a sudden that taxonomy is using everything it knows, or it's either combining everything it knows from construction and IT, or it's only focusing on one when you need the other. So the work on the taxonomy itself is probably the most important part of any parser out there, because that's what's getting that information normalized in your database. It's what's ensuring that you're getting all the appropriate data, even the data between the lines for each of your applicants. And I know at RChilli, we cover over 20 different verticals. We've got, I believe, 800,000 base skills. That's not counting all the different aliases. When you start counting the different aliases, when you add in job titles, different aliases for job titles, skills, schools, etc., now you're starting to look at 18 plus million different line items in that taxonomy. Okay, so it looks like we're coming up close on time. Are there any other questions that I can answer at this time? With that said, thank you very much, everybody, for giving me some time to chat with you today. I hope you found it helpful and beneficial. And like I said, don't hesitate to drop me an email or give me a call if you have any questions.